Sean right here in Orlando, Florida at the Roundtable meeting with the Hall of Famers, the Maryland Muscle Machine, 4-time first Olympia runner-up and 2-time Arnold Classic champion, Kevin Levrone, and the 4-time All-American, fabulous Flex Wheeler and Arnold Classic champion, still a record today, retired now, and 2-time first Olympia runner-up, or was that 3? I like when you correct me. We're here to share with you guys today a little bit about our history. We come from a bodybuilding era that arguably was the golden era in bodybuilding. I think it was one of the most competitive times to be a professional bodybuilder there in the mid-90s, segueing into the 21st century when Kevin Levrone was at his best and Flex Wheeler, a former USA champion back in 1992. Kevin, you won the national championships back in 1991.
By beating me.
By beating Flex. Flex, let me start with you, man. We're going to talk a little bit about our diet and our training approaches because we're all three very different and arguably should have at least one sound down amongst the three of us.
Right.
It's amazing that being in the Hall of Fame, none of us do. But on the way, Flex, you were one of those guys that came out of the gate really fast and really hard. You won the USAs. You went on to win your first 4 pro shows, which still hasn't been beaten in today's economy. Tell me a little bit about your approach to training with the weights and how you went about that: heavy, light, high reps, low reps.
You know, at first, I mean, I've said this before in magazines and everything. I got to give credit to you. You know, back when I came from Fresno, I came from a really small gym and, you know, really wasn't that high fancy gym and had a lot of money. So we didn't have a lot of bodybuilding magazines or anything like that. So the first person I ever seen was a picture of you, and I actually used to emulate your posing and stuff like that and videotape myself posing, and then I would try to, you know, emulate some of your poses and stuff like that. But honestly, as I've said a million times, I really didn't know that much about bodybuilding. I didn't know that much about dieting or, you know, what the Olympia meant or anything like that. I think one of the first pro shows I went to was a show that you won, was the Ironman, and that was the first time I ever seen a pro show. So I think in my innocence of competing, I just was really naive. So I just went hard at everything. I came from a martial arts background, so we just, you know, believed in going full force. But dieting and everything like that, I really didn't know anything. I used to diet on tuna and bread, you know, sourdough French bread. And then as I moved up to Go's Gym and met Rico and Chris and those guys, and then, you know, hung out with you guys, I started learning a little bit more. But you know, I think truly my first probably 3 or 4 years competing as a pro was just really based off of just learning. I just really didn't know that much about eating. I remember a couple of times going over your house and seeing how much food you ate. And I was like, wow, how do you even eat that? You know, I can't stomach that stuff. So I have to give more of the beginning of my sport in bodybuilding just based on genetics and just, I don't know, it was just like a rock and roll star.
Yeah. So let's talk about the specifics of how you trained and try to surmise it over the course of your history. I'm talking how it evolved. I mean, how it took you from being the 5-time Ironman champion that you were to ultimately into the Hall of Fame of bodybuilding. It had to evolve over the years. You turned pro back in 1991, 92, and you retired in 2003. So tell me how it started and how it ended.
You know what, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but honestly, for me, it's such a blur now. You know, like to dive deep back into my mind frame and the way I train right now, I really have to think about it. Most people would think we would just come up with it naturally, but it was kind of like more so all instinct of training. I believed in using super high repetitions. I believe in going as hard as I could as far as training and everything like that. What I understood even when I first started competing as an IFBB pro is that it's not how much weight I use, it's how much it costs for me to exert that energy in the training. So say that if I train with a training partner, and I trained with you a few times. I never got the honor of training with Kevin, but I trained with you a few times. What I understand mentally is that if I'm training in your style of training and it's kicking my butt, I'm getting a great workout. It never played a role on me playing a mental game or anything like that. And the same thing is if I went in the gym and I squatted 1,000,000 pounds. If I can, and I did that well, and I came back the next time and I squatted only 400 pounds, but I'm puking and throwing up blood and everything like that, my mind, my body doesn't know the difference in the weight. Right. All it's doing is exerting as much energy as possible. So that was kind of like my flexology of training back in those days of training.
I like the flexology style. To contrast that, he would be lifting 1,000,000 pounds and puking up blood. What would you be doing over there in Maryland, Kevin? Because we never got the chance to come out there and mess up your gym. We knew you were strong.
I honestly, I would be wondering what these two guys were doing in California. Sean Ray would kind of let out what his training would be about. Now, I know you really like high reps. You always said that you were burning guys out. but Flex was somewhat, couldn't quite really pinpoint, what you were coming from or what your style was going to be, because you had the mastermind of Charles Glass behind you, but every photo shoot that I saw, you would always have this lightweight, and I'm like, how can this guy possibly build, right, this enormous, beautiful physique with just this little bit of weight? Now, so it had to be something going on with just that you weren't really letting out the bag, and a lot of it had to do with genetics, but a lot of it had to do with, I guess, your training style and your approach. With you were like straight up. But my approach was just straightforward. I just went in the gym, attacked the weights, and really just trained heavy.
Yeah, and we could see clearly you train heavy. You had those traps, those arms, the shoulders. Definitely a strong bench presser, strong trap. Man, you had like 7 or 8 plates on the trap on the bars. I've seen the picture.
It was outrageous. I remember the weight that he would bench before a contest, because the great Mitsuru who came up with the battles of the Olympia. I remember so much and looking forward to seeing that, because then I could see what everybody was training. Me again, my training style, I was dieting so roughly towards the end of my career and middle of my career. I really had no type of energy to exert that type of weight or anything like that. But I remember always waiting to see what you were doing and what Kevin was doing, because Kevin freaking 7 days out before the show is still freaking doing 4 or 5 plates bench, and I'm like, how the freak does he do that? I don't do that on my off season. But the honest to you really easily, Kevin, on photo shoots and video shoots, I never did my true weight. Because I always want to be different. I want to kind of be comedic. I want to try to be like fun. I just wouldn't want to be in a gym where it's humdrum and stuff like that. So I never threw around a weight that I actually really could. You can go back and ask Chris Cormier or Rico. I did do some pretty good weight, but never as strong as you. Never as strong as you.
One question that I've always wanted to ask you, and I've never ever even asked Flex Wheeler this question, was, did you ever flat bench?
You know what? We did flat bench, but it was never our primary bench. We always started off with incline, because from early age, me, Rico, and Chris always understood that most people had great from mid to lower pectorals, but never great upper pectorals like the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, great pectorals. And then there's a couple of people from California, actually in the prison system that I knew of, that had these great pecs where they put like Coca-Cola cans on their pecs and be standing like this. So we'd start off with incline benching. Incline benching. Then we go to incline dumbbell. Then we go to flat bench dumbbell, and then we do a lot of hammer and pinch, hammer strength movements. But really, never was a fan of the flat bench, and the reason why is because, in my ignorance, meaning my lack of knowledge, I always understood anybody who ever had a chest injury was from the flat bench position. So I was always scared of that, and I always got micro tears throughout my entire career. So I was always really scared of going really heavy on the flat bench. So I think the most I ever did was like 4 or 5 for reps. What about
that, Flex? Flex Wheeler would be like on tour, and he'd be like, "Oh, Flex is eating like cheeseburger. What was this cheeseburger and French fry thing that I always would hear about it?" And don't get me wrong, right? It was because, he's on growth hormone. That's how come he could, right? That's how come he could do that. Is that true, dude?
Well, I saw you. You were in there with Chris Cormier, who's one of the best bench pressers that are out there. Yeah. The bench press was always a staple in my routine. I just never started with bench press. I was also very familiar with a lot of pec tears. John Brown, who got me started, tore his pec. I watched Barry DeMay get 3rd in the Olympia in my first year in 1988, tear his pec, and pretty much
on what movement?
It was always on bench press.
Right.
We know that Rich Gaspari tore his pec. We saw some great warriors go down. I remember Kevin Levrone getting ready for the Olympia. Was that 94, 95? I think it was.
93.
93, you were getting ready for the Olympia, and you had the pec tear injury, and we were hoping that you weren't going to come in as the dominant force that you were from 92, coming off a first place runner-up. So we know that exercise is a career killer. Very few people can recover the way that Kevin Levrone did. My style was never to be the strongest. Mine was always to be the best. I knew my limitations. I knew I was never going to have the barn door delts that you had or the round full arms that you had, but I had some great role models ahead of me that were not very big. Samir was not very big.
Could you ever bench press? Like, what was your bench?
I was strong. I'd do 4 plates. I'd do 405. It wasn't a problem for me to get up to that weight, and that was sometimes my second or third exercise in the rotation, but I didn't gauge my build based on my strength. I knew that Muhammad McAway, Chris Dickerson, Samir Banu, these were guys that were Olympia guys. Albert Beckles was second in the Mr. Olympia in 1985 when I was starting to get heavy in the game. These guys were not strong bodybuilders, so I knew I could get to where I needed to go without jeopardizing an injury going super heavy. But arguably I was strong. I'd squat 5 plates. You were there.
I know for legs. You used to try to punish people in legs. I mean, that was one of your strong points. But, okay, so now I understand that based on, I mean, you started before all of us, and you started with a lot of the dinosaurs and greats. So coming from that background, you understood that it wasn't necessary to be the strongest guy in the world and throwing a lot around the weight, where me and Kevin came on secondary, and it was more or less about strength in the both of those worlds. And
you guys were bigger. You're taller. You're 5'9", 5'9". I mean, and you had to 5'10" and a half. You had to battle Ronnie Coleman, Nasser El Somebody. I never in my wild dreams thought I could lift the kind of weight they did to get that size. I was a 210-pound bodybuilder at best. So my style was finesse, completeness, and balance and proportion. I focused on high repetitions and fast-paced workouts. I couldn't outlift you, but I tried to take you to the ground by drop sets and stuff. So that seemed to work for me. And the good thing about bodybuilding was, you know, you might have been a guy that had to eat steak and, zero carbs, and you're a guy that needed fish and high carbs, and I was a guy that could eat junk food. All of us could eat different things, and still yet we all wound up looking phenomenal. I used to watch you eat cheeseburgers a couple weeks out from a show and go nuts.
I understood that, Flex. I mean, you know, Flex Wheeler would be like on tour, and he'd be like, oh, Flex is eating like cheeseburger. What was this cheeseburger and French fry thing that I always would hear about it, you know? And I mean, don't get me wrong, right? It was because, well, you would say, well, you know, he's on growth hormone. That's how come he could, right? That's how come he could do that. Is that true, dude?
Well, you know what? I'm very transparent with the sports technology or drugs I use. I'm very transparent about that. It's no big secret. I will say that I don't want to put nobody else out there, but I will say that I didn't use anything that nobody else didn't use at that time. What I think it really was, and I'll be really honest now, because I always let that joke go that I can get away cheating and stuff like that, but what it really was is that I would go zero carbs for months at a time. Which most people couldn't do. I would just go on like filet mignon. I'd have like up to 88 ounces of filet mignon for months at a time. So going into a show, that was my way of getting back my food in, the carbon up on the fats and stuff like that, because it's not really carb sensitive. I don't think that's a word on it, but my body would freak out so much on carbs that I was more stable on fats. So things like peanut butter, things like hamburger meat and stuff like that, where normally I think that would throw everybody else's body out of whack. That's the only way that I could survive and not spill over. So I always understood that when I'm in tremendous shape, I couldn't continue eating on a steak because I'd be ready to puke. I couldn't handle it. So instead of doing like the carbs and stuff like that, I would just switch over to super, super high fats. Now, honestly, were they the best fat consumption that a person can take? No, but what I understood, it was more important that I could eat than whether I could eat the right thing, because I could look at the right food and eat, and I would puke right in front of it. Or I would look like at a hamburger and french fries and not be able to eat that. So some of the few times that I came in too small, I started to understand, well, it's more important for me to get some food in than not to get food in. So
in other words, it's like he was already in shape.
Yeah.
Like so Flex Wheeler was already prepared weeks before the show even came. Mm-hmm. He didn't eat that to get in shape. He was eating that to better his condition.
Right. And what did you eat? Were you a guy that ate a lot of?
Well, hold on, one more question. See, because I mean, we did
We
battle.
want to find out what you ate.
We really did battle, dude, and there was a lot of mystery around Flex and around yourself. But you know, it's like, I mean, I always admired both of you guys' physiques, and I was like, wow, you know, Flex, you had this beautiful back double bicep pose. I was like, man, this guy's just awesome. But I mean, I never knew that you would like eat salmon. You said
yeah,
months, 3 months, no carbs, zero carbs. I mean, that's like a mind power, a place that you would go to where it took, you know, this belief or this strength to do. You know, that you were like 100% here, so. You know, maybe that explains why you weren't lifting really super heavy weight. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know what, Kevin? It actually really spawns from, and I said this again in magazines, so you can go back. I was, not to, you know, harp on it, but I was super, super poor coming from Fresno, so I couldn't afford anything else. Actually, my martial arts instructor and great friend Ty McGuire used to actually go out and buy my food. So what we would do, we'd go to Vons. And based on his income and him being an officer, based on his income and feeding himself and myself, we were like, okay, what can I afford to do? So we would just go in and buy these tuna cans. We'd buy 30 or 40 tuna cans for me, and we'd buy some sourdough French bread and Gatorade. So and it got me in shape. That's how I won to California and almost how I won the USA and everything. So for me, for a while, it was just, I'm like a creature of habit. I remember Sean, when I met him, he would be training for the Olympia and he'd go out for a freaking movie after training and then go back in the gym. I couldn't do that. I was similar to you, and I remember some of your videos. When I went into training, I had to stay there at 100%. I had to be just a creature of habit. It was no happiness, no fun or anything. I go to the gym. I was really humdrum. Got up in the morning, did my cardio, went to the gym, came back, went to sleep, got up, eat, went to sleep, got up, eat, went back to the gym, came home and eat. And that was it going into the show. I couldn't have no fun. And I never understood how this guy would. I got to break it up. I'm like, I can't. For me, I couldn't go into the normal world and then dive back into hell. That would kill me. I would end up cheating on my diet because I couldn't handle both worlds. Where I remember, and is it true that for you that you wouldn't even sleep in your normal bed because you have a beautiful house down in Maryland where you live? From what I understand about you is you wouldn't even sleep in your normal room. You'd go into one of the other rooms that didn't have no bed and sleep on the floor because you had to actually live the experience. And Sean couldn't do that. I mean, he'd go out and have fun and drive around in his cars. I would wreck my cars getting ready for a show. That's the various of the difference. But that's how the diet really started.
And it shows that we're all three, in the Hall of Fame, got there in very different ways. So there is no script on how to get there. Going from canned tuna fish to filet mignon must be good to be Flex Wheeler. Kevin Levrone, you were one of those guys. Again, you were a soldier at war. It seemed like you had to isolate yourself, like they said in the gym, to get to where you went. So, and Flex, I mean, I happen to be a good bodybuilder genetically, but I did the business of bodybuilding. You can't get there by happenstance. You have to have a plan. Your workouts are structured. You're in the gym twice a day. You were running a gym. You were raising kids. I happen to be on my own, raising my dog. So it runs the gamut on how you wind up at that Olympia. But we're going to have more from the Hall of Famers. We're going to move it on. We're going to come back and we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about our competition years, some great stories, some killer battles where all three of us were trying to get that elusive Olympia Sandow trophy that we never got. So we're going to come back with more Roundtable right after this.
So for me, I had to put myself in this solitude place after my training. So yeah, I would go to a room. I would have this certain room in my house where it was just empty. And when I get done working out, that's where I would sleep. That's where I would do my 12-week, 16-week preparation. And as I would sleep, I would think about Flex. I would think about Sean. I would meditate about the show. Dorian Yates, how he moves, how Sean Ray moves, how he's going to present himself. But I would lay like I had a Mac 90 machine gun. I had, my M16. I had, seriously, dude, I had like my 9mm.
What's with the weapons, man? What's with the weapons? You were going to war, but were they loaded? Sean Ray from MuscularDevelopment.com here in Orlando, Florida. Part 2 of the Roundtable series where we were talking earlier with the Hall of Famer Flex Wheeler and Kevin Levrone. Back in the days of the Battle for the Olympias that Mitsuru started back in 1996, I was one of the first guys to ever partake in that, and it was a great concept because this was the first time where the cameras would go across the country and preview the Olympians as they got ready on the countdown to the Mr. Olympia, and we got little glimpses and little stories of what each bodybuilder was doing on their way to the road to the Mr. Olympia. And it started in 1996, and we were talking earlier, Flex, you got a glimpse at what Kevin Levrone's philosophy was like and some stories and myths that were kind of out there. We were under the impression that Kevin was a soldier at war, one of those guys that slept with a gun and wore his fatigues. And I mean, Kevin, tell us what was going on with you getting ready for the Olympia, because truly you were out for blood.
Well, I mean, we all were out for blood, and it was just, a way for me to find that inner strength that I needed, you know what I mean, to go into battle. Because, I mean, everything that I've done leading up to every time I've walked on stage, it's always been like, if you make one little single, there was no room for mistakes. You didn't have time to really compromise and go back and fix a mistake. So my preparation started mentally, probably 6 months out from a show. Mentally, I would paint these pictures in my head of what you guys were doing, Flex Wheeler, Sean Ray, Dorian Yates, because we all wanted to be Mr. Olympia. and I would like study like tapes of Flex. You probably didn't notice, but I would like study how he moved on stage, his personality, what kind of like ticked him off. So certain things I would go through in my mind, and then with you, I would always like listen to the way that you would talk, or you would speak up, and you would say things that was on your mind. So I kind of knew what would irritate you too. So for me, I had to put myself in this solitude place after my training. So yeah, I would go to a room. I'll have this certain room in my house where it was just empty, and when I get done working out, that's where I would sleep. That's where I would do my 12-week, 16-week preparation. And as I would sleep, I would think about Flex. I would think about Sean. I would meditate about the show, Dorian Yates, how he moves, how Sean moves, how he's going to present himself. But I would lay like I had a Mac 90 machine gun. I had my M16. I had, seriously, dude, I had like my 9mm.
What's with the weapons, man? What's with the weapons? You were going to war, but were they loaded?
Because it was like when you diet and you put yourself in that war zone, you have to think that you're like a soldier and think that the suffering and the pain and everything else is going to pay off. So I didn't need any food. I needed to completely visualize myself going to battle in war. But for me, it was a different type of war. Instead of grabbing them guns, but having the guns there and looking at the bullets and the ammunition and stuff, it was crazy. It just put me in that mindset. So I would go to sleep like that, wake up 4:30 in the morning, and the first thing I would do was go to gym. Think like a soldier, train like a soldier, be a soldier. Because, like I said, when it was time for like game day to show up at a show, I kept that mindset, and that's what we took. That's what I took on stage.
Kevin,
and I remember crazy, Kevin.
Right? You crazy?
I remember
when we would finally see you. I mean, it's almost like you're energized off of anger. Kind of similar to myself, but I want to switch gears to Sean. I remember. Sean, we'd all be boys. We'd travel to shows, go to different countries and everything together. But you and your training, you were very different because you would distance yourself from all of us. And I remember it used to piss me the freak off that here we are, we're traveling, going all over the world and stuff, hanging out, same flights. We'd make sure we're on the same flight and same hotel. But come time getting ready for a show, dude wouldn't like call. If I was to call him, he'd blow me off and wouldn't want to talk anymore. I'm like, what the freak is this, dog? We're like, so tell me your mind frame of why. I even remember that you voicefully saying that you would even actually stop talking to your girlfriends. You would dump them before a show. What was your mind frame and why did you do things like that?
I wasn't as crazy as Kevin. Weapons signified violence. It was danger with weapons and stuff. The first time I ever shot a gun, you took me to the gun range and shot the Glock 45, and I thought that was the last time I went. Yeah. That was back in like '94. My philosophy, I was also a soldier at war. This was a one-man mission that I was on. I didn't want to drag the emotional baggage and responsibility that a personal relationship with a female brought into it. I didn't want to be responsible for somebody saying that you're not available for me emotionally or physically. This was something I was trying to become. The dieting for me was on autopilot. I didn't have a problem eating the plain fish and the tuna and the steamed rice. I didn't have somebody complaining what was in the refrigerator or whatever like that, but I knew I was up against an insurmountable odds against you guys being the bigger. I was giving up 3, 4, 5 inches in height, 50, 60 pounds in weight. I came behind Lee Haney, for Christ's sakes. He's 8-time Mr. Olympia. And then here came Dorian Yates. We threw everything we could at the Mr. Olympia champions, Dorian and Ronnie. And arguably, people said if I was 20 pounds heavier, I might have had a better chance. Hell, you were 20 pounds heavier. You were 20 pounds heavier. We couldn't get there with the routes that we were all taking separately. So I had to find my way, the best way and the most enjoyable way that I could. I loved, my time as a professional bodybuilder, going to movies and my little celebrity that I created for myself. But my boat sank and swam on what I did in the gym and in the kitchen. I didn't have a guru. I didn't have a training partner. I trained with everyone. And I loved coming down there and showing you a little bit of what I had, because when I left, I think it energized you. Rico, you guys used to hate seeing me coming, and when I left.
It's so mental, man. That dude would come in, again, I come from a different, I think after you finally had read my book, you're like, damn, crazy. I didn't know that you're really actually that crazy, or else I never would have F with you like that.
You were crazy. You could have killed me, as a matter of fact. I'm surprised I'm still alive. I was putting my hand in the lion's mouth, but I was very cerebral playing with people. I didn't play with people the way that Arnold did. I didn't consider myself a prankster, but you know what? I didn't have any friends getting ready for the Olympia. I was fighting for the same prize money you were, and I knew what you were bringing to the table on the East Coast, but you know, I was probably closer to you from a distance, and we got closer after bodybuilding because we took the competitive edge out of the equation. But bodybuilding, and this doesn't ring true today, it was a solo sport on the way to the Mr. Olympia, and now everyone has a trainer or has a cook or a nutritionist or whatever, and they rely on these people to get them where they are. Back in our day, we relied on these Battle for the Olympia tapes to see what our competitors were doing and had to find our own way. I like that individual go-to-war mentality. I just don't see it in today's economy, the desperation and the hunger, not just to be the best in the world, but you know, to eke out a living. These guys aren't even bodybuilding unless they have a sponsor. I mean, we weren't doing it for the money.
No, we did it because we wanted to be Mr. Olympia. We really wanted to be Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I wanted to be Mr. Olympia. You know, we lived I would die to be Mr. Olympia. But the question that I have for you, Sean, and you know, because you inspired me, you know, before I knew who Flex Wheeler was, it was like I knew who Sean Ray was, and the thing that, you know, your drive, you encouraged me because every time that I would see you at a show, on stage, you would always just be so polished, right, Flex? He would be so polished, and you would do things that I wish that I could do. You know, like number one, you know, your posing, man, was just so like beautiful and graceful, the way you moved and everything. But the question, you know, it was a rumor, but did you always like really like, was it true that you like prepared your posing routines like weeks and weeks and weeks out from the show?
I mean, that's why I got drawn to bodybuilding. Part of the beauty of bodybuilding was when I watched Muhammad McAway, Chris Dickerson, Bob Paris, and of course John Brown, who got me started in bodybuilding. That's why I wanted to go to shows, was to see these guys perform. That performance is gone, Flex. I mean, I bit off of all of those bodybuilders and threw the Sean Ray flavor in it, and what you saw was a reflection of years of bodybuilders that looked at posing as a craft and as an art, as just as important as eating those meals and getting those workouts in. And today it's kind of a lost art.
Yeah, it really is. And same for me. I like I said, I would envision myself doing your routines, and actually I would actually have my buddy videotape myself, and then I'd go back and watch the video. And I always understood, and I even said in interviews again, that, you know, I wanted to be able to pose like Sean Ray, and then when I was mature enough as a bodybuilder, step into my own, you know, Flex Wheeler ability. But for me, the same way, I would actually pick music that I wanted to pose to, and I would drive around, I would listen to that music. Each time I listened to that music, I would do a completely different routine. And what that helped me to do is, no matter where I was in my song on stage, I could still flow with it no matter what, instead of like where guys would have, you know, their routine and they had to hit this pose at this time, and if they didn't, they were lost. So I would do something like put an entire Mariah Carey you know, CD in a posing room that goes Jim Venice, and I would just keep posing over and over and over, and just working on transition and stuff like that for hours, so that when I got on stage, I already knew my song, and I would play my song all day that I was going to pose to, and each time I would play it, I would do a different pose. So that really got me used to being able to perform on stage. But that's what really drawed me. I mean, the training was okay. I think I loved the way I looked. I didn't love what I had to do to get there. I didn't love the diet whatsoever. I kind of liked the training because I got the feel of it. But for me, the best thing in the world of being a IFBB pro was to be able to go on stage and express myself. To be able to express myself to the audience. I always understood that I wanted to, you know, I chose to use slow music because I wanted them to shut up, sit down, and pay attention to what I wanted to present. I didn't want to use this high impact music before I even come out there like, yeah. I didn't want that. Yeah. So, and I remember, Kevin, as you started to mature as a poser, you started transitioning over to and expressing yourself, and I really remember seeing you come to life after you started singing as a rock star. I mean, everybody knows that Kevin was a great singer. He had his band called Full Blown. But after I think you got comfortable in performing as a singer, you were completely different when you came back on stage as a performer on stage, and that's when you really started to irritate the shit out of me. Your pose and everything, because I knew that you weren't one of those type of posers. So when you upped your game that way, you really changed the game also for us. You're kind of like Arnold. You would kind of like deflect what you were going through onto someone else. So I remember these times you accused me of calf implants when we all knew, we all sat in back.
Let's go there, 1997, Long Beach.
We all back knew exactly what I did for my calves.
Tell us exactly what you did for your calves.
Listen.
Kevin wants to know.
That was
I taught you. I taught.
Let's put it out. The round table is now turned into a confessional. The round table is now turned into a confessional. Let's find. Speaking of changing the game, I'm going to get to the darker side. There's some stories out there in bodybuilding. If some of the fans aren't aware, they're aware of the stories, but they haven't heard it from the horse's mouth. Kevin, in 93, you tore your pec. I imagine that had to be a very dark place for you, coming from first place runner-up in Helsinki, Finland in 92. And then I remember distinctly looking at you in 2000 when you got second. Was it 2000, I believe it was? You got second to Ronnie Coleman. Arguably one of the best photos, layouts that we had of you, black and white pictures of back in the day. Tell me where the dark spot for bodybuilding for you. Where was that black hole as your professional career was evolving?
Well, I mean, you know, it was probably one of the worst and greatest things that ever could have happened to me.
Which part?
Both, ripping my pec and coming back from that. Just when you have an injury, you know, and Rich Gaspari tore his pec before. It's such a devastating injury that could end your career, you know. And for me, I felt like, you know, that was a moment also for me to rise to the occasion. And Flex, you know, you would know this because, you know, your martial arts and the things that you had to focus and overcome and the visualization that I needed to go through to build myself. That was an opportunity for me to do something that really had never really been done in the sport, and that was to get myself healed, you know, pray to God, you know, have a connection with God, but tap into if I could come back or not. That was a huge challenge for me.
Well, speaking of challenges, Flex, you were going 100+ miles on the freeway, rolled a brand new Mercedes-Benz, which happened to be a convertible, and you were riding high coming off of the Mr. Olympia Championship, second place in 93, 4 first-place victories. It seemed like the world for you was your oyster, and then there you were with a near broken neck and all kinds of injuries, laid up in a hospital with a totaled car and your career in peril. Tell me about that dark place for you.
Yeah, that was one of many dark times for me. I was in disbelief. I remember when the paramedics came up, and ironically, my training partner, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, my training partner, Rico McClinton, had pulled up beside and had seen the accident, and he pulled over and he was talking to me, and I couldn't even remember any of it. It was a couple of years later when he actually told me what had happened, but I remember sitting in a hospital and talking to the doctor like, yeah, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get ready for the Miss Olympia. You know, I'm a Miss Olympia competitor. You know, I think it was 2 days later when he finally broke the news to me that you're not going to make it, you know, son. And I broke down. I just couldn't believe, and I just really thought my career was over because, you know, I'm competing against, you know, in my opinion, some of the greatest competitors that ever walked the stage of bodybuilding. And these guys, like you said, they're running 100 miles an hour. If I'm stopped and I can't do anything, they're 100 miles ahead of me. They're not going to stop running for me. So one of the worst things for me is actually going to the 94 Mr. Olympia. And that's where I remember Paul changed his size game. Nasser changed his size game. And here you are still doing battle and everything like that. I'm like, I remember sitting next to Madeline, I was like, it's over. How am I going to catch back up to these guys now? So I just kind of like go on autopilot. I'm almost kind of like mental, like a machine. I just went on autopilot, and I was like, all right, well, I'll just do the best I can. So I just went back in the gym and just start doing what came natural and everything like that. But for me, I was always self-doubt, you know, like Kevin and yourself, and we had arguments about this at the pro meetings and stuff like that. I never chose to go for first place at the Mr. Olympia. That was always my mind frame. I just always set myself for second best, but that never stopped me from giving everything I had to try to win. I never really went into a show thinking I could win because I was a pessimist actually about everything. So the car accident, it was just another part of life where, you know, all right, I got something else to deal with, you know, and what am I going to do now? And so my mind frame was kind of different because I always felt that I was behind enemy lines, even though I would never say it out loud. When I walked around, I would try to walk around like I'm the it, and I'm the it factor, and I'm the thing that's God's blessed to the earth. But in my mind frame, that was never the case. Even standing next to you guys, touring with you guys on stage, that was just my way of trying to take attention off myself because I didn't want people looking at me. So if me and Sean or me and Kevin are standing next to each other and I tap him on a leg and like, yeah, look at my leg, I'm tapping you on a leg because now the audience is looking at you because I just transcend all the energy to you. And that was my way of playing games because I never really wanted myself to be looked at on stage.
Well, let's talk about playing games. In let's say in New York in '98. Hold on, in '98. You remember this? I want you to get my question, but '98. You were second in the Mr. Olympia. You got your medal. They put it around your neck. You took it off your neck, and you looked at the fans and you said, no, 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 and then you turned your back to the audience while Ronnie Coleman dropped, in obviously disbelief that he become Mr. Olympia. Address the fans. What was that all about?
Actually, you got him confused. In 98, Ronnie won, and that's when he dropped to the floor. I went over and hugged him and pat him. And what I said into his ear is like, hey, man, congratulations, I love you. And I jokingly said, hey, you know I'm not coming to your party, right? You know, and that's when I walked off stage. And 99 is when I took off my medals. Yeah, and what happened, it really hurt me that I always had lived my life thinking I could never win anything, any of the big shows. So when that happened in 98 for Ronnie just to come out of nowhere and win, I kind of challenged myself and said, well, why don't you believe in yourself? How come you don't think you can freaking win a show? So then I changed. That's when I changed, and I really went to try to win the Olympia. In 99, coming back to the Olympia, and I remember putting on 14 pounds of more muscle, and I was in better shape, and kind of all you guys backstage like, man, you know, Ronnie's not like he was in 98, man. You might can win this thing. So that's when I really, the first time ever believed in myself that I can win. So, but also was
You cried.
I cried at all my shows when I lost. I was a big crybaby.
I just want to get that out there.
Yep. Hey, I'm a big crybaby. But really quickly, not to take up too much of the time, 99, the reason why I took those medallions off, because at that time it signified to me that what placing they give me doesn't signify me as a champion. And I always signify, if you win, then you're a champion. I was always hardline that, hey, listen, it's first place and it's freaking last. There's no in between. But at that time, it finally realized to me, like, listen, I feel like I look great for a change. I feel that I won, and just because you put these second places around me doesn't slave me into second place or the mind frame of a second place. So for when I took them off, and I pointed, I said, these are second, but I'm number one. Yeah. Just because you put these around my neck, don't make me second place. And that's what I was really saying, and I think the audience really misunderstood it. But I went to Ronnie right after, and I gave him a hug, and I said, again, congratulations, bro, I love you. I won't be at your party again. So that's really what I was trying to explain, and that's what I finally came to in 99, that, hey, just because they placed me in second, don't make me a failure.
Is that your best in Olympia ever?
Actually, I think it was the 99, Olympia, yeah, but not my best condition. A couple of weeks later, I came in at 253. And actually, Ronnie even admitted that he thought I'd beat him at the Grand Prix.
Okay. Actually, I think that Flex, you look your best. That was at, the first Arnold Classic you won? Yeah, I heard about that. It was just
This is Sean.
Let's talk about him.
Sean about his dark.
Take a commercial break.
My question to Sean was, you know, I mean, what was your dark moment? Because if you did have a dark moment, I never knew about it.
Yeah.
Because he was always so consistent, and I was like, it's phenomenal how this guy can just be like the same on every single time. You know, the same personality. You're just this bundle of joy, having a great time, walking through these to where, you know, he's throwing stuff around, being emotional, and I'm like, you know, all across the board coming in at 250, 233, but you were always so solid. What was your mindset? What do you contribute that to?
What did you think my dark moment was?
You know what? I know the dark moment for me, for you, is when the tragedy happened with your mother. And that was something really personal. I knew your mother, and she was like a mother to me. I used to come over to the house and hang out. I knew that really hurt me. And for you to be able to come back and compete, going through all that, was really, it was challenging for me to even be able to talk to you about that. Was your darkest time?
Yeah, obviously, whenever family's involved, it's going to affect your training and your focus, but
does Sean Ray cry?
I cry in movies. Listen, I cried on Free Willy. I cried recently on The Fighter. I mean, I cry in moments of triumph, not tragedy, on triumph.
I cried one time, and that was when you were having your golf, charitable golf raising. For that cause.
You're right.
It's like you always like, freaking, let's try to break this guy, right? What, you know, I want to get him here, I want to get him low, but you were always just so hard.
Let me tell you something about my philosophy as an athlete and as a bodybuilder. I realized I was good early. I came from winning my second contest that I competed in.
Came from money.
To winning. My dad was a janitor that cleaned toilets, and my mother was an electrical engineer.
Right, came from money.
Perception is everything. I did come from. I was the youngest of 8. I came from a 2-story, 3,000 square foot house. I'm gonna back it up. I was the youngest of 8. We had a 2-story house. We were middle America. We were, I would like to say, middle class.
Right.
I was the only black kid in my school for many years, other than my siblings. I was the only black guy on the football team. But I did come from success. I was very good at all the sports I participated in. I did martial arts and boxing. MVP on my high school football team. I didn't lack confidence in my abilities. Winning my second contest, becoming teenage Mr. America in 1985, junior world champion by the time I was 20, turning professional 3 years out of high school in 1987 did wonders for my ego and wonders for my confidence. When you say you come from money, I didn't have my pockets lined because, Kevin, I was cleaning toilets in elementary school. In high school, I would run for 150 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns, and that night at 2 in the morning, I'd be out cleaning toilets with my father. That gave me a discipline that nobody else had that I came up with. I did that all through junior high and high school. I was touted as a very good running back in the High School Hall of Fame, and yet there I was cleaning toilets.
Let me ask you this question. What was it? Because I mean, you're smart. You know, you're very smart and everything. And every time I hear you, he would always you would always speak for all of us. You know, you had that voice to say the things that probably Flex and I wanted to say, right? And you would always stand up for what was right for us back then. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy should have been an attorney, you know, because everything you said always made sense to all of us, right? It's like the one thing you don't want to do is get into a battle argument with Sean Ray because you will lose, right?
I was passionate, man.
What was it that turned you? How did you decide I want to be a professional bodybuilder?
You were really, there was word out. Rico and Chris said if I came into Gold's Gym, you were going to kick my ass. I mean, and then I would come down there, and there you were.
What was it that turned you? How did you decide I want to be a professional bodybuilder?
Yeah, I mean, my athletic achievement turned me into a professional bodybuilder. I was winning everything I was doing. I mean, I was a professional, you know, 1 month after my 22nd birthday and in the Mr. Olympia at 23.
You were also a great athlete, running back. How come you didn't go down there?
I didn't go running back because I was injured my senior year, and I started lifting weights and bodybuilding and competing. And when I started winning, I thought, well, this is an individual achievement. In football, I'd get my 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I'd be sitting on the bench in offense and playing defense, and I wanted to run the ball. So the perception was I was greedy because I wanted to play, but after halftime, they, you know, let another guy play. It's a team sport. Bodybuilding was an individual sport. You reap what you sow.
You're selfish, and you
I was very selfish, and there's not a bodybuilder on the planet Earth that's good, that's not selfish, but it's all contained. My arguments in bodybuilding, Kevin, I think sometimes I was too smart for the establishment. The prize money, I fought for the prize money. If you made it to Olympia, you should leave with some prize money. So I fought for those things that weren't beneficial to me, but beneficial to all of us. Someone had to say it, and that's just me. So I had a loud mouth. It cost me a few times, I think, in terms of people liking me in a certain way, because I was very abrasive, but I was passionate for you guys.
See, the thing is, you could afford to do that because you brought the physique and the package to back it up.
Well, at the end of the day, it's a physique show, and I mean, if you do the business at the gym, they can crucify me on stage by not rewarding me for what I thought I should get, but I have no ill feelings towards my career. My plate was very full in terms of it, and I got great friends. Here we are in the Hall of Fame talking about all this. The judges couldn't stop the bond that we have now. They couldn't stop the success because we were world travelers. We had our legions of fans. I mean, wherever you went, they loved Sean Ray, they loved Flex, they loved Kevin, and here we are still, you know, looking back and paying it forward. We just don't have that passion in today's economy in bodybuilding, where the athletes are looking out for each other, not to mention speaking up for each other.
Right. No, I definitely think there was an incredible camaraderie between us most of the time. You know, I remember times where I was on stage and I just was barely just making it, and I could hear Kevin behind me, come on, Flex, man, you know, fight for it. I remember times where, you know, I actually got sick in other countries, and Kevin would be sitting there in the hospital with me, and we'd both be shedding tears like, you're going to be all right. So there was a different type of camaraderie, and I think that's born for me when I met Lee Levrone on stage, and I asked him a question. I was like, you know, how do you stand there like that? And Robbie Robertson, I mean, I had the honor of standing with that guy on next stage, and he's like, you're looking at a pro's pro. And just to understand the camaraderie between those guys, I think it transcends through our career. Even though we I definitely wanted to beat everybody, you know, but I didn't want to hurt that person or harm that person. So when I seen them struggling, for me, I identified to their struggling on stage, and I wanted to spar them on for that. But definitely, there's a backlash in that now that's not there.
Let's address the rumors and the questions that you, the fans, have out there. Kevin Levrone, rumor had it that you were coming back a couple of years ago to bodybuilding. You put it out there hot and heavy on the Levrone report, and boom, nothing happened. Talk about it.
Talk about it. Let's see. You really have to ask me that.
Were you? That's from the fans. Were you going to ever make a comeback? Was it ever in your mindset that you were going to get back on stage?
Jesus, here we go.
These are your fans asking the question.
Let me ask you this question.
Answer a question first.
Was it ever in your mind that you wanted to come back and be on stage again?
This came from a fan directed at you.
Yes, it was. I was there.
When I
was in the gym with him.
We all have those moments.
I was in the gym with Sean. This was back when we were training at Full.
We all have those moments.
No, I never did. But I remember, I was there and I was talking to Sean. I was like, listen, I go, bro, you sure you really want to do this? He goes, yeah, I'm dieting.
What year was it?
It was when we were attending at Milos's gym. It was before I moved, so it had to have been like 2000.
It was early.
Yeah, 2000 something. But I think what really happened, and I think I talked to a lot of guys who contemplate on coming back. And my thing is, there's a reason why we quit. There's a reason why we retired. But how we so soon forget until we go into the deeper part of dieting and training. It's easy to go in the gym and train hard and eat fairly clean and everything. But when you got to go back into that world of hurt, where you got to change your dieting and everything like that, and that sacrificing, I didn't have it anymore. And I really didn't think Sean had it anymore, or any of the other guys, because we were younger, we were naive, we had a different mind frame. We sit here and we're so distant from the guys that we were as competitors. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why we retired. But, you know, go back to that question, Kevin, because out of all of us, I still feel that you're the guy who can actually come back and compete after all this time. So were you just tickling the audience with that? Was it
No, I wasn't really tickling the audience with it, to be honest with you. I was approached with an offer that seemed like it was almost impossible to turn down. So that's why I was exercising the idea of coming back, because I knew honestly that I could come back. But then after I thought about it, you know, like you said, going to that dark place for me, at that point I said, well, I can't make this about the money. You know what I mean? So then I decided, well, I can't compete because, you know what I'm saying?
That's fair enough.
I have another question. That dark place for me, where I think I really shined best, I truly know that I did, but it was probably the most unhappiest time for me ever, getting ready for shows. That dark place that I had to go to be able to do my work of art almost killed me almost every time, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And for you, Kevin, did it ever almost pull the life out of you having to go into that hell pit to be able to come out and shine like a brilliant diamond?
Yeah, it was like, I mean, for me, it was times where I just felt like I wasn't going to make it, you know what I mean? Seriously, I mean, just, yeah, that dark place. Yeah, it was times where I felt like, you know, I mean, yeah, thought about some crazy stuff, man. Thought about, you know, just some really crazy stuff. I don't know if I want to say it right now, but
well, bodybuilding's not for everybody, for sure.
Another time, but yeah, I mean, there's all kind of things that go through your head while you're sitting there on stage. Yeah. You know, and you're out there and you're looking, you're calculating everything. You know, who's your enemy, who's not your enemy. You know, so there's all this stuff that's going through your head, right?
All right. Well, Son, you never had that super dark place and everything like that. But like you're saying, that we're also different. I look at all these old footage of Muhammad Ali and all these other great, athletes. They also had this dark place where all their trainers around them, like, this guy's not going to make it or he's killing himself or whatever. What was different about you that you didn't have that dark place? I remember you. I mean, like a freaking, a whale. You would submerge and get this air of having fun, and then go back into deep depths to be able to do your war. How did you do that?
I distanced myself from friends, but I never lost friends. I never left my roots. I moved away from home, but I was only a 30-40 minute car ride from home. So I was well grounded. My roots were right there in Orange County. This wasn't a foreign entity, this bodybuilding thing. I bodybuilded 5 minutes from my home. I didn't sacrifice anything except for the camaraderie when it was competition time. When my contest was over, I was back to being Sean Ray.
I mean, tell me about your struggles. I mean, tell me about some struggles that you've had that I can communicate with, because it's honestly, it's kind of I can't relate to this. freaking perfect kid that grew up, that
Let me tell you,
perfect grades, perfect athlete, perfect. Come on, man.
I mean, I don't believe that in sports to be good you have to come from the mean streets or the streets of hard knocks. Although a lot of our success stories in bodybuilding, boxing, and football, these kids come from some pretty dark places, and they have to, by circumstance, excel. I didn't have to, by circumstance, excel in order to make ends meet. I had a very loving family unit. My parents divorced when I was 17. I think I submerged myself in bodybuilding because of the breakup of my parents. My dad and mom divorced after 20 some odd years. I was 17 years old, splitting time between houses. I found my outlet in the gym.
Let me ask you this question, okay? You ever think about suicide?
Absolutely not. I've never thought, and I know that some of us have gone to some dark places, I've never thought that I would give up my life for anyone or anything for that matter. I had too much to live for. I mean, I am the youngest of 8, so I had a very big family unit. I certainly didn't lack in the love department. I know you came from basically not having 2 parents as a young teenager. And Flex,
I can't remember my parents ever being in the same house together, but I won't base my suicidal tendency on bodybuilding. I was like that at the age of 12. I just had problems growing up. Kevin, me and you have talked about it. We had an interview with MD where the first time that you actually, and you've acknowledged these things already in the magazine, but I think that was the first time you publicly acknowledged of being, having a drinking problem and having the horrors of actually being suicidal. So we all come from different backgrounds, but for me, what that helped me to understand is like, just because you have these hormonal things that traumatize you in your deepest darks of corner doesn't mean that you can't, be able to move beyond those and achieve greatness like we all have here. So just for the people out there that are dealing with any of those type of dark horses, it doesn't mean that it has to hinder you and being able to be productive and achieving greatness.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think coming from a dark place can ground you, but it can also destroy you. I mean, coming from a place of sunlight, for me, I was bodybuilding to achieve greatness. I was trying to be one of the great ones. So I know. Go ahead.
We're all trying to get Son to pull some of the problems out. I'll tell on Son. I remember it was only until, and you acknowledge this whether it's true or not. I always wondered why you would play these mental games. For you, I think it was more not the anger or anything like that. You were kind of like Arnold. You would kind of like deflect what you were going through onto someone else. So I remember these times you accused me of calf implants when we all knew. We all sat in back.
Let's go there. 1997, Long Beach.
We all back knew exactly what I did for my calves.
Tell us exactly what you did for your calves.
Listen,
Kevin wants to know.
That was a question.
I taught you.
Let's put it out. The Roundtable is now turned into a confessional. The Roundtable is now turned into a confessional. Let's find Flex Wheeler speaks.
It didn't work, right? No. So Kevin was saying he didn't remember.
Kevin has a question. What?
What do you?
First. And I'm yeah, okay, listen, yeah, that's why they look the way they do now. Okay. No, I never had calf implants. Listen, I understood that when we use certain substances that it caused a inflamed effect when we use certain substances in certain areas. I understood that. Now looking back and seeing that I never had weak calves, I actually had better calves back in my early years than I did in my later years. But what I thought, it's like, wow, if it causes that inflamed effect when I do something to certain areas, what if I did that to my calves? So I started doing that exact same thing to my calves and everything like that. I remember one time in my hotel room, Kevin coming in like, dude, what the fuck you doing to your calves? And I showed you right then and there and showed you how. But I don't want to put you out there or anything like that. But I remember I asked you about a certain substance that caused an inflamed effect. And I was like, Kevin, I go, I never, Why did you
ask him about that? What was so important about you asking him?
Because, listen, it never bothered me. I'm not the best at everything I do, and I understand that everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses, and I never had a problem with giving someone else accolade on something that they were better at or had better than I did. It just didn't bother me. So Kevin and his incredible proportionist, and actually it was back when he had his pec injury when we had talked about this, because you were able to come in really full and everything, and I'd had a suspicion that I'd heard these things, so we were close enough at that time that I had asked you, and I said, hey man, what are you doing? Is this really true?
Did you get the answer?
I did, brilliantly. He was very given. I mean, you know, oddly, I don't know whether it was because me and Kevin are on different sides of the United States, but, you know, we would give each other an effing hell of a problem on video. I mean, we said the worst things about each other on video, but when we got with each other, it was never that. I remember Kevin came down and guest posed in San Jose, and we just hung out and had a great time, and this, that, and other, and we bonded, and we actually did our first seminar together, and I couldn't believe some of the things that Kevin said about me publicly in front of everybody else, but we never had this problem. So if Kevin wanted to tell you the information that he gave me back then, I'll let him do that, but I'm not gonna put him on blast. Then I was gonna drive over to Sean's house, and I was actually on my way to his house at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I already had it set up in my head. I just saw how effed up I was. I was going to knock on his door, and I knew that he would open it because we're close. He was going to knock on his door. I knew it would be nobody at his house at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was going to close the door. I was going to, if I could, I was going to beat him down. If Kevin wanted to tell you the information that he gave me back then, I'll let him do that, but I'm not gonna put him on blast like that.
I mean, there's other questions that the fans have written in that want answers to, and Kevin, one of them was, you said that you were a better bodybuilder than Flex Wheeler, that you were genetically, physically a better bodybuilder, 4-time Olympia runner-up, 3-time Olympia runner-up, but they said that, do you believe you're better than Flex?
First of all, I don't think I've ever said that. Never, because I've always admired Flex Wheeler's physique. Honestly, I swear, I really did. And the things that he would do, I was like, wow, I wish I could do that. You know, no. So I never said that I was better than him. I said that, you know, there were times when we competed that I felt like, you know, he shouldn't have won ahead of me.
Are we talking about the Arnold Classic in '97 or?
No, I mean. He was upset about that show.
You know, I never heard that rumor that Kevin ever said that to me because, yeah, I can answer. I never heard that. I know Kevin, in front of everybody at a seminar, had said, you know, that he thought I had the greatest back, and because of my back, that he trained a different style to try to achieve that. What I will say on record is, I feel that out of all the competitors that I ever competed with, that Kevin is the greatest athlete that I ever competed with in my life because of the things that he can actually do. I mean, I remember a time where he actually raced against an Olympic sprinter and almost beat the guy. You know, for Kevin to be able to do that at the weight that he was at, truly, I understood that whether it was bodybuilding or it was football or track and field or anything physically, this guy is superior in doing that.
Are you a better bodybuilder than Kevin?
You know what? No, I think we all have our different.
Question back at him because you.
Sean would say, "Yeah." Well, you know what?
What did I say about you?
What I was getting at is that I remember after we were done competing, and you used to torment me in magazines.
I trained with you for 2 Arnold Classics.
Yeah, you did. You used to torment me in magazines and interviews and stuff like that. And as we all know, it really wore on me to the point where
you wanted to kill me.
Yeah.
The rumor was you were going to beat me up at a bodybuilding show.
No, yeah, that's true.
You were looking for me.
Yeah, that's all true. And again, it comes back from,
he was looking for me.
I found you. I just think by the grace of God I didn't do it. But what it was is we all came from different backgrounds. I came from like the ghetto, and I came from like, if you even talked about your next door neighbor, you had to deal with that dude with fisticuffs, or you couldn't talk about a guy around the block because he's going to come over and he's going to get with you. So for me, it was dumbfounding to hear someone put it not just in your neighborhood, but they'll put it out global, you know, in magazines or interviews that they're putting you down. I'm like, I remember a time we almost got into it. I wanted to get into it with you at a
You're a pro.
No, at a athletes meeting. Remember, but anyway, it was only until we retired that Sean gave me the understanding of what his game was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. We were talking, and I think it was one of the times where he was saying, you know, I never knew that you had these type of mental challenges, Flex, or else I never would have effed with you like that. And he goes, you know what, all I was doing is I understood that, you know, in my perception that you were weaker minded than I was. So I played on your weakness, and I knew that it was mental for you. He goes, I didn't know that the states and the things that you went through as a childhood manifest. He goes, so I looked at it as that you're a weaker mind. He goes, the reason why I did that is because I knew that you were taller than me. I knew that you were better than me in aspects that I wasn't, only because if I identically look like you, but I'm taller and weighing heavier, then that makes me a little bit better. He goes, so you had those things that I couldn't compete against, so I competed against the one thing that I knew I could, and at times I feel that I victored towards you because I was able to challenge you mentally. So
no, you're absolutely right. And I also said that you were the better bodybuilder than Dorian Yates. You were the best bodybuilder. You were the model that I was trying to beat. But I could play with that mind, and it works sometimes. I think it helped keep you out of the '97 Olympia, which helped me out. But also, Flex, when you were in the hospital, who was there?
No, you know what?
Tracked him down.
Yeah. When
No one knew where he was.
for the kidney transplant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't come out publicly and talk about any of that stuff. And the reason why, and it cleared a lot of stuff up really quickly on that is, a lot of people had a misconception that I had kidney problems because of my utilization of sports technology drugs, when it's actually, a fatal disease that there's no cure. It's called focal glomerulosclerosis. So what was really challenging for me is that, for a while I had been fighting for my life. 98, I knew that I was in a problem. 99, they told me point blank that, listen, you're not going to live till you're 40 if you don't get this rectified, and there's no cure for it. 97% of the people pass away from that. So all that was really effing me up, and I was still trying to compete, and I was at war with all this stuff. So I didn't talk about it because I knew that the public would proceed based on the things that I utilized, that I caused this for myself. So the greatest discomfort wasn't me, because I always had this weird analogy. If I ever put myself in harm's way, listen, freaking don't cry about it. Don't, you piss in your bed, freaking lay it down, now deal with it. I was always like that, but what really challenged me is I had 2 kids at the time, well, 3, actually 4. Jeez. I had 4 kids at the time, which was Brandy, my oldest daughter, Kenan, my second, my first son, and Darius and Nia. I knew that they had to deal now with this disease because it was uncurable, and we didn't know how it transcended through the kids and everything like that. So I didn't talk about my problem. Next thing I know, I'm laying in bed at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and Sean walks through the door, and I'm like, I'm drugged out of my mind, but I respect that. Even my car accident, you showed up. Lou Ferrigno showed up in my car accident. So again, as I said before, here we are able to talk about all these things, and it's truly because, we all wanted to defeat each other on stage, but we didn't want to cause that other person harm, except in my mental messed up mind frames when this guy was effing with me. But other than that, that's the difference of the closeness that we have, and we still carry to this day, that they don't have.
Yeah, the internet wasn't around for people just to throw stones at us, so we had to communicate picking up the phone the old-fashioned way, or writing a handwritten letter, or actually getting in our car and going to see about each other. And the fans didn't understand that or see that, but the only dynamic they did see were the war in the magazines. But I mean, you were really, there was word out. Rico and Chris said if I came into Gold's Gym, you were going to kick my ass. I mean, and then I would come down there, and there you were.
I know. I mean, that was true, and I've apologized to you that already. We had some deep conversations, but again, I didn't understand the war or the game that you were playing with me. I didn't understand that it was a mental game to try to get inside my head. Again, where I came from, if you talked about a person, look for that person to come back at you however they want it. So I put it in my book, and we talked about it. But yeah, I knew that me and Sean were super close. I knew that at any given time I could go to his house. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, he's going to open the door. I was so effed up one time when you called me out about calf implants. I was like, this dude know what I'm doing. He know I don't have no freaking calf implants. But I literally had to go to a doctor, and they took x-rays and all this. I'm like, he's just trying to F me up. So I was so...
My famous last line of that is they wound up in the Long Beach Harbor at the '97 Mr. Olympia competition.
Oh my God. Is it true that you actually had him taken out or something?
No, God. Oh yeah, Paul Dillette. Was you a part of that too?
By the grace of God, I'm still here.
But I was thrilled about my game. But anyway, what I had set up is I had to cause a fight. I had to cause a fight with Madeline to be able to get out the house. So I cheated on my diet, which triggered an argument with me and Madeline. Then I was going to drive over to Sean's house, and I was actually on my way to his house at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I already had it set up in my head. Just how effed up I was. I was going to knock on his door, and I knew that he would open it because we're close. He was going to knock on his door. I knew it would be nobody at his house at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was going to close the door. I was going to, if I could, I was going to beat him down.
On the white marble floor.
And it's nobody there. I was going to beat him down to the point where he just couldn't, I wasn't going to kill him, but I was going to bloody him up. My thing was I wanted to physically do some things to his face that when he went out in public, people seen him knew that I did it. And when I was done, I was going to close the door, lock it back, and drive back home. No witnesses. 2 o'clock in the morning. He can't tell me. I can't get in trouble. So that's how really messed up I was.
Flex, you crazy.
I'm okay now.
You just got to assume that first punch was going to knock me out, right? Because if it didn't, pow, pow, pow.
You know, I mean, he said he was dieting down, so he wasn't
crazy.
thinking right. You're a troublemaker.
Who's crazier, you or him? With
You're the troublemaker, though.
I'm the troublemaker
He's the
here.
instigator.
I'm the troublemaker
He's the
here at the
puppet
round table.
He's the puppet master.
I'm the puppet master here at the round table, but look at us. We're all sitting pretty here in Orlando, Florida at the Europa Pro.
makes it
Kevin, the
a
captain
story.
of Levrone Formulas. Flex Wheeler, the captain of EFX.
Yeah, stop trying to say it. Yes, one of the owners and partners.
All right, hey man, great stories, great battles, man. But the good thing is, you know, we're all in our mid-40s and we're all still here, happy, healthy, and wealthy.
Great stories now, don't they?
No doubt, man. You want to see more of the Roundtable? Tune in to musculardevelopment.com with the Hall of Famer Kevin Levrone, Flex Wheeler. I'm Sean Ray, musculardevelopment.com.